Hi, I'm Dr. Jones, and I'm a professor of educational psychology. In this Psych Insight video, I give you insights based on educational psychology principles related to how to flip online teaching. Flipping is a generic term used to mean different things, but typically before class, students do something outside of class time, like complete a reading or watch a video. And then during class time, students work on more active activities, such as problem solving, answering questions, case studies, discussions, etc. That way, during class, students can receive help from the instructor and others in the class as they engage in the activities. In this video, I'm going to discuss how to apply flipping to a synchronous online course that meets at least once a week or so. Before the online class, students will read something, watch videos, or do something else to obtain some basic knowledge of the content. Then, they will complete an assessment prior to class, such as a quiz or short assignment. As an instructor, your planning before the online class will require you to identify your learning outcome. What do students need to know, do, or feel as a result of these activities? Think about what students already know about the content. Select existing materials, like the readings or videos, etc., that build on what students already know. Decide if you need to create any new materials. And decide how to check if students have met the learning outcomes and completed the activities, like the online quiz or short assignments. To apply educational psychology principles related to learning, you will need to connect new content to what students already know. Doing so can increase students' understanding and memory. Provide an organizational structure, such as an outline or an organizational graphic with concepts. Doing so can increase students' understanding and memory. Provide an assignment, like a quiz or other assignment that assesses the important concepts. Doing so can focus students' attention on important concepts, give students feedback about their progress, and provide more opportunities for students to learn the concepts. To apply educational psychology principles related to motivation, you can think about the 5 components of the music model of motivation, which include empowerment, usefulness, success, interest, and caring. For empowerment, consider giving students choices of materials that accomplish the same objectives. This can be time-consuming, so you may not want to try this the first time you're flipping your class unless you have some time. Otherwise, keep it in mind for future changes to the class. Next, you want to make the usefulness of the content explicit, maybe by providing an explanation at the beginning, or maybe by giving an example as to why the material is useful. Also, you want to help students believe that they can succeed, which you can do by making instructions very, very clear. You can minimize a lot of emails to you from students and problems by creating clear instructions. Also, choose content that isn't too hard or easy. You want to make sure that students have the ability to understand the material. You may consider providing a study guide or other supplementary material to help them if needed. You should also select interesting content. Choose your materials wisely, and consider if your readings and videos hold students' attention and interest, or if they read like an old encyclopedia. And finally, let students know that you're available to help them if they need it. In my research, I found that students perceive that the instructor cares about them when they receive emails reminding them of what they need to do, and any other information that can be helpful as they work on the material. Okay, so now that you know what to do before the online class meeting, let's focus on how to plan for what students do during the online class meeting. Here's what's going to happen during the online class. Students will receive instructions about what they're going to do. Students will work in groups and do something like create a product or write down ideas. Students will come back to the entire classroom online, and you will summarize the lessons learned and/or main points. And you may give a mini lecture on a related topic or on a topic related to the next class. Now, how are you going to plan for this? Well, first you need to select an activity that allows students to use the information they learned before the online class, using activities that require them to either apply the information to a similar or new situation, analyze a case or scenario, evaluate a product, situation, case, etc., or have them create something new. You're going to have to provide any background information needed for the activity, or summarize the main concepts they need. And then you can explain the activity in terms of what they're supposed to do. You'll also need to decide how to assess the activity. For example, they could submit a product in your learning management system, or they could have a group leader write down their ideas. Then, decide how long students will need to work on the activity, and which groups you will visit during the breakout rooms. You may want to pop into each group's room if you don't have that many groups, just to hear what they're talking about and see if they have any questions. Then, decide what you want your students to do once you meet back in the whole group. For example, you could select a few groups randomly to share their findings verbally, or by sharing their screen. Then, decide how to summarize the lessons learned, or main points. Lastly, decide if you need another activity, and if so, repeat the process by explaining the next activity. To apply educational psychology principles related to learning, at the beginning and/or end, explain how the class learning activities relate to the learning objectives and their lives. Doing so can increase understanding and memory. Also, hold students accountable for what they do in group work. For example, you could have each student submit something, or have the group submit something, and then explain what each person contributed. This can be especially important for larger activities, and doing so can increase participation by all group members. The assignments that you gave students before the class meeting focused on basic knowledge, which can be retrieved from long-term memory as they work on the class activities. But for the class activity, you want to select activities that require higher-level thinking. Here we see Bloom's revised taxonomy, which includes different categories of thinking. As you prepare your activity, decide which type of thinking you want students to engage in. Do you want them to apply what they have learned to a familiar or new situation? Do you want them to analyze information? Do you want them to evaluate information by making judgments based on certain criteria or standards? Or do you want them to create something new? They won't engage in all of these types of thinking in one relatively short activity. So think about what you want them to do and make sure your activity will require students to do it. To apply educational psychology principles related to motivation, you will again need to consider the 5 strategy categories in the music model. For empowerment, consider giving students options within the activity so that they have to make some decisions along the way. Also make sure the usefulness of the activity is explicit, maybe by providing an explanation at the beginning, or giving an example as to why the activity is useful. Also, help students believe that they can succeed by making the instructions very clear and providing materials they need to succeed during the activity. Make sure to choose an activity that isn't too hard or easy based on their current abilities. It's best if you can select an interesting activity, maybe one that's related to the real world, or relevant to current events, or something novel that they hadn't thought about before. These types of things tend to increase students' interest. And for the caring component, let students know that you're available to help by visiting them while they're working in groups, or having them ask questions on the chat feature that you can answer in real time. After the class is finished, you can then repeat the cycle for the next class by assigning another class assignment before your next class meeting. Another option is to add some type of assessment or assignment related to the content in the prior class before giving them their next assignment. Of course, I just described some of the basics involved with flipping your online class. You can make modifications throughout this process and come up with your own creative ways of meeting your instructional objectives. At some point, you're going to want to assess students so that you can improve the class. You'll assess their learning through their graded assignments or products, or anything else that they do in the class. But did you know that you can also assess students' motivation? For example, you can give them a brief online survey to obtain feedback about students' perceptions of your class. You will want to do this at least once, maybe near the end of the course, but you can do it at different points to see how you are progressing, and to get feedback that will allow you to make improvements during the course. For more information about this, visit the musicmodel.com website. If you want more information about principles of educational psychology, I've written the 2 books shown here, and they're available at amazon.com. Thank you for watching, and please subscribe to my YouTube channel at Brett D. Jones, because I'm constantly creating new videos related to teaching and learning.